Welcome to the Stoic Storyteller, your sanctuary for raw, unfiltered stories about the darker side of human nature. Here, we dive deep into the reality of life, the toxic relationships, the bitter betrayals, and the quiet, calculating art of absolute justice.
My sister took my son 3 hours after our father was murdered, then used his inheritance to convince a judge I was dangerous. At her wedding, she planned to become his legal mother. She did not know Dad had written a second will and hidden his killer inside it. My sister took my son 3 hours after our father died. She did it with a court order, 2 police officers, and the soft voice she had used our entire childhood whenever she wanted cruelty to look responsible. Ben was sitting on the front step of my apartment when arrived. He wore the dinosaur pajamas he had slept in at my mother's house and clutched the wooden chess King Dad had carved for him last Christmas. I had not slept. I had spent the night answering questions about why my father's smart insulin pen showed my fingerprint, my access code, and a fatal dose delivered at 10:14 p.m. I had found Arthur Hart on the floor of his study at 10:31. By midnight, the police had found the argument we recorded 2 days earlier. By 1, they had found my scarf beneath his desk. By 2, my mother had told them I had been unstable since my husband died. At 3, filed for emergency custody. She stepped out of a black car wearing cream trousers and Dad's company pin. She said, as if approaching a frightened animal, "This is temporary." Ben looked at me. "Am I in trouble?" "No. Are you?" Answered for me. "Your mother needs some help." I hated her most in that moment, not because she lied, but because she used the language I had once trusted. After died, I had spent 6 weeks in treatment for panic attacks and insomnia. My family called it recovery when they wanted credit and instability when they wanted leverage. The police officer handed me the order. It said I posed a potential flight risk and emotional danger. It quoted a psychiatrist I had not seen in 4 years. It claimed Ben had reported being afraid to return home. I knelt in front of him. "Did you say that?" His eyes filled. "Aunt said the judge needed to know I was scared last night." "Scared of what?" "Grandpa dying." Placed one hand on his shoulder. The gesture made the sentence look like evidence against me. I stood. "You used his grief. I protected him from an active murder investigation. You filed before Dad's body reached the hospital." Her face barely changed. That was talent. She did not hide emotion. She rationed it. Our mother, Diana, remained inside the car. She looked through the window at Ben, not me. The family had already arranged itself. The murdered patriarch, the grieving widow, the stable daughter, the unstable daughter, the endangered child. Every role had been assigned before the blood cooled. Ben whispered, "Grandpa told me the Blue King only moves at midnight." Tightened her hand on his shoulder. "What does that mean?" I asked. "I don't know." She guided him toward the car. I followed. The second officer stepped between us. "Ma'am, do not make this harder for your child." A sentence designed to turn resistance into harm. Ben looked back once. I wanted to promise I would bring him home. Promises are dangerous when another person controls the door. So I said, "Remember the board?" Dad taught Ben chess on an old blue and white set in the estate chapel. He used to say every piece lied about how powerful it was until the board became smaller. Ben nodded. "Put him in the car." Before she closed the door, I saw a bruise on his wrist. Not large, not proof, a crescent where fingers had held too tightly. I reached for him. The officer restrained my arm. Diana lowered the window. "You have done enough," she said. Her voice carried no grief, only exhaustion, as though my father's murder were another consequence she had expected me to create. The car drove away. My phone rang. Detective asked me to return to Arthur's estate. The security team had found a final voicemail recorded on Dad's phone 20 minutes before his death. I drove there under police escort. The study still smelled of whiskey, old paper, and the medicinal sweetness of insulin. Dad's chair lay on its side. A glass had shattered near the fireplace. His phone sat inside an evidence bag. Detective played the message. Arthur's voice sounded weak. "If I die, did it." 3 seconds of breathing. Then silence. Watched me. I listened again. Dad had not said, "Killed me." He said, "Did it." A sentence without an object. The kind of sentence a lawyer could finish for him. On the desk lay a family photograph from his engagement dinner. Dad, Diana, Julian, Ben, and me. Someone had drawn a red line around Ben's face. Beneath the frame, investigators found a draft of Dad's new will. It left the estate. It left me $1, and it placed 51% of Senior living into a trust for Ben, controlled by his legal guardian. Had not only taken my son, She had taken the key to my father's company. The coroner found a piece of paper inside Dad's fist. Only 4 letters remained visible beneath dried blood. Leah. The rest had been torn away. The prosecutor called it a dying accusation. Detective called it incomplete evidence. My mother called it closure. At the first family press conference, Diana stood beneath the senior living logo and told cameras Arthur had spent his life protecting vulnerable people. That was the public version of my father. He built luxury retirement communities, managed resident estates, and funded legal clinics for elderly people facing financial abuse. He also believed families should keep shame private, records should serve stability, and the person who paid for a room owned the truth inside it. I had inherited his appetite for numbers, and none of his confidence that numbers were neutral. 3 months before his death, I found unexplained legacy transfers, moving money from deceased residents into a charitable foundation. The signatures matched, the witnesses changed, the lawyer remained Julian Cross. I sent Dad a report. He called me disloyal. 2 days later, he asked me to meet in private. That was the argument police recovered. In the recording, Dad accused me of trying to destroy the company. I accused him of hiding theft. He said, "You always choose principle after someone else pays for it." I said, "And you always call fear responsibility." Then he told me to get out. The public clip ended there. The original audio should have continued for 11 minutes. It had vanished. Julian arrived at the estate during my second interview. He wore a dark blue suit and the expression of a man attending his own successful argument. He was 43, controlled, and careful not to look at the bloodstain on the rug. As family counsel, he represented Diana, Ben's trust, and according to him, the estate itself. Everyone except me. He handed an envelope containing Dad's psychiatric concerns about my fitness as a parent. The letter claimed I had obsessive tendencies, paranoid thinking, and revenge fixation toward the family. It carried Dad's signature. I recognized the language. The same phrases appeared in the emergency custody order. Who drafted this? I asked. Julian folded his hands. Arthur dictated it. When? Last month. He asked me to audit the legacy transfers last month. People can request work from someone they do not trust. He spoke as though every contradiction proved sophistication. I asked whether the will on Dad's desk was final. Julian said a formal reading would occur after the funeral. Already filed for custody using the trust. The child required protection. The trust did not exist until Dad died. It existed in contemplation. Legal language made predation sound patient. Detective asked why the smart pen recorded my biometric. Julian produced a company security report showing I entered the estate at 9:48 p.m. The camera image showed me in a black coat crossing the rear hall. I had arrived at 10:27 after Dad called. My coat was dark green. The woman in the footage never turned fully toward the camera. She wore my hair, my height, my walk. Elder care facilities used gait recognition to monitor fall risks. His department oversaw the software. Noticed the same thing. She asked for the raw file. Julian said the server was under a state privilege. A dead man had become a client, still capable of hiding evidence. My phone vibrated with a supervised call request from Ben. Appeared first. He is upset, she said. Please do not discuss the case. I want to speak to him alone. The order requires supervision. Ben entered wearing a new sweater. His hair had been brushed too flat. He sat beside, close enough that her arm pressed against his. Hi, Mom. Hi, baby. His eyes moved toward her, gave the smallest nod. Ben said, I think I should stay here. The sentence sounded memorized. Do you? His mouth trembled. Aunt says Grandpa wrote that you get angry when people tell the truth. I looked at her. She did not blink. I asked Ben about the Blue King. Ended the call. Julian's phone rang. He stepped into the hall. Before the door closed, I heard him say, she mentioned the chess piece. He looked back at me. For the first time, the family lawyer appeared afraid. I returned to Dad's desk and examined the torn paper from his hand through the evidence photograph. The 4 visible letters were not the beginning of my name. They were the end of a longer word. Someone had torn away the first part, enlarged the image. A faint curve remained before the L. The word was not Leah. It was illegal. Dad had not died naming me. He had died holding the final word of a warning. The emergency custody hearing lasted 11 minutes. Julian spoke for 9. He told the judge I had discovered my father's plan to place Ben's inheritance beyond my control. He said I confronted Arthur, administered a fatal insulin dose, and attempted to remove records from the estate. He described as the only stable maternal figure available. My lawyer objected that Julian represented the financial beneficiary seeking custody. The judge said conflicts could be reviewed later. Later is where power stores damage, through tears that she had never wanted children, because she believed Ben already filled that place in her life. She described school pickups, birthday cakes, weekends at the estate, and nights she stayed with him after died. All true. Love does not stop being love because it is later weaponized. Then she said Ben had asked to call her mom. I looked toward the observation room. He sat behind one-way glass with a court advocate and a stuffed fox I had never seen. The judge asked whether intended to seek permanent guardianship. Julian answered, if circumstances require. A careful phrase. The trust vested in Ben when Dad died. Until he turned 25, the legal guardian approved trust distributions and appointed 2 company directors. Custody was corporate control disguised as caregiving. My lawyer requested an independent guardian. Julian argued outside placement would traumatize Ben. The judge agreed with the relatives who had filed first, received temporary custody for 60 days. I received 2 supervised calls per week and no physical contact. As the hearing ended, Diana passed me in the corridor. You always wanted the company investigated, she said. Now you have destroyed the only man who could survive it. I did not kill him. Arthur thought you would. Arthur thought many things when Julian wrote them down. Her hand moved. For 1 second, I thought she would slap me. Instead, she touched my cheek with 2 fingers. A mother's gesture performed without warmth. You do not understand what families must bury to remain families. Then she walked away. Detective met me outside with a copy of Dad's toxicology report. The insulin dose was fatal, but not immediate. Arthur remained conscious for at least 12 minutes. He could have called emergency services. He called me instead. The call lasted 7 seconds. No words appeared in the record, only breathing. The smart pen's internal clock had been adjusted 6 minutes backward. The company app still listed 10:14, but the hardware oscillator placed the injection at 10:20. At 10:20, security video showed Diana entering the estate chapel. Was at a restaurant with Julian. I was driving from my apartment. Dad was alone in the study, or someone had used the chapel passage. House had been built in 1891. A narrow servants' corridor connected the chapel vestry to Dad's private library. My sister and I used it as children until he locked the door after we found Aunt Rose crying there. Rose was Diana's older sister. She died 4 years earlier after an insulin error inside the estate. She was not diabetic. The coroner called it medication confusion. Diana inherited her shares. I told. She searched the archived report. Julian Cross had represented the family. The attending physician now worked for senior living. The smart medication system had recorded Rose authorizing her own dose. Looked at me. Same technology. Earlier version. Who managed it? This department. The custody order stopped feeling like a reaction to Dad's murder. It felt like the next step in an older system. That evening, the funeral director called. Mr. Hale had buried Hart's for 32 years. He said Dad had personally selected his clothes 6 months ago, including a pair of silver cufflinks engraved with chess pieces. One cufflink was missing when the body arrived. The family demanded Hale replace the pair before the funeral. While checking the jacket lining, he found a brass key sewn beneath the left cuff. Arthur had given him written instructions. If anyone attempted to replace the cufflinks, the key went to, not Diana, not Julian, me. I met Hale in the preparation room after dark. Dad lay behind frosted glass. Hale handed me the key and a small envelope. Inside, Dad had written one sentence. The first WILL rewards the person who takes Ben. The public will was bait. Had taken it. The key opened something hidden beneath the estate chapel. Dad had expected his death. He had expected my sister to take my son. What he had not written was whether he expected to survive long enough to stop her. The public will was read in-house beneath a portrait of Dad smiling, beside the company's first retirement home. Julian sat at the end of the dining table with 3 witnesses and a camera recording every word. Diana wore black silk, wore cream. Ben sat between them, his legs too short for the chair, the wooden blue king hidden inside one fist. I attended remotely from my lawyer's office. Julian read the inheritance in a voice designed to make theft sound ceremonial. Diana received the house and lifetime income, received Dad's personal estate, voting control of 49% of, and authority over the family foundation. Ben received 51% in trust. His legal guardian controlled the trust's board appointments until he turned 18. I received $1 and a letter. Julian opened it. Dad had written, "You mistook accusation for courage and loyalty for cowardice. You have brought instability into every room you entered. I cannot allow Ben or to become another instrument of your need to be right." Lowered her eyes. Diana looked into the camera. Ben began crying silently. The letter sounded like Dad at his cruelest. It also contained one phrase he never used. "Need to be right." That belonged to Diana. She had said it every time I contradicted her as a child. Julian continued. The will directed that if I faced criminal charges connected to Dad's death, my parental fitness should be independently reviewed and should receive preference as guardian. The murder and custody had been anticipated inside the document. My lawyer requested execution metadata. Julian said Dad signed before 2 witnesses at the estate clinic. Both witnesses worked for. The physician who handled Aunt Rose's death notarized it. The trap had signatures. After the reading, Ben asked to speak. Julian muted the formal recording, but forgot the family call remained connected. I heard whisper, "Say what we practiced." Ben looked at the screen. Aunt and Uncle Julian are getting married next month. I kept my face still. That is soon. They said Grandpa wanted us to be one family. You and I are already a family. Leaned into view. Do not confuse him. Ben's fist tightened around the chess piece. He said, "After the wedding, the judge can make them my parents until you get better." The room inside me went cold. Julian appeared behind him. "It is a permanent guardianship petition, not adoption." Ben said parents. Children use imprecise language. Lawyers use precise language to hide the same thing. Diana ended the call. My lawyer stared at me. They are accelerating permanency because the trust has a corporate vote in 6 weeks. Its board would decide whether to sell the company to Meridian Care, a multinational chain that had quietly purchased foundation debt. Its guardianship gave her Ben's 51%. Marriage to Julian consolidated the vote and legal control. Dad's death created the asset. My arrest created the custody. The wedding created the ownership structure. A family celebration built around a hostile takeover. That night, I used the brass key beneath the chapel. The servants' corridor smelled of stone and dust. At the end stood an iron cabinet built into the foundation. The key opened the outer door. Inside was a digital safe requiring a 6-piece chess code. Dad and Ben's blue and white board. I called Ben during my supervised time. Answered from the estate kitchen. I asked him what the blue king did at midnight. His eyes flicked toward her. "It moves backward." Kings do not move backward differently at midnight. It was a code. How many squares? Grandpa said family cheats, so count the pieces they stole. Ended the call. I returned to the chapel and examined the old chessboard carved into the safe. 6 blue pieces were missing from the estate set. King, queen, bishop, knight, 2 pawns. Their positions formed the code. The safe opened. Inside sat a video recorder, a sealed envelope marked second will, and a file titled Rose. I played the video first. Dad appeared at his desk. "If you are watching this, I am dead, and has probably been blamed." Relief nearly broke me. Then he continued, "Do not assume that means she is innocent." The screen changed. Security footage showed me entering Dad's study on the night he died. Not the false hallway image. A closer angle. My face, my hand opening the insulin cabinet. My voice saying, "This ends tonight." I had no memory of entering the house before 10:27. The timestamp read 9:52. Dad looked into the camera. "Someone in this family taught you to forget." The video destroyed the certainty I had been using as oxygen. I remembered driving to Dad's estate at 10:18 after his 7-second call. I did not remember entering at 9:52. The footage showed no obvious edit. My coat was dark green. My gait was mine. I knew the insulin cabinet code because I had helped Dad organize his medication after a fall. I watched myself remove the pen. The camera did not show an injection, only access. Then I left through the chapel passage. My lawyer advised me not to tell police until the file could be authenticated. I told detective anyway. She watched without interruption. "Could you have gone there earlier?" she asked. "I do not know." "Any medication? Sleep tablets prescribed? Alcohol? No. History of blackouts? No." The answer felt less stable than it had yesterday. Requested my pharmacy records. The prescription came from Dr. Estate physician, the same doctor who witnessed Dad's will and handled Aunt Rose's death. My tablets were labeled. Independent testing showed they contained a low dose of a sedative used before medical procedures. It could produce memory loss. I had taken one at 9:00 after a day of police threats from the company. Then received a message from Dad's number asking me to come through the chapel. The message had been deleted from my phone, but remained on my car display log. I had gone to the estate. Someone used me to open the cabinet. Someone expected me not to remember. Asked who knew my prescription. Diana, Julian, Dad, doctor. Family and the people paid to call themselves professional. The public video was more damaging. At noon, a news site released footage of me entering the study, and a headline claiming I had lied about my timeline. Julian issued a statement on behalf of the estate, gave an interview outside Ben's school. She said, "My priority is protecting my nephew from further trauma." Ben stood beside her. A reporter asked who he lived with now. He looked toward, "With my mom." The clip repeated all afternoon. My son called her mom because a camera waited. I turned off the television. Then I turned it back on. His left hand held the blue king. He tapped it twice against his leg, paused, then once. A pattern Dad taught him when he wanted to say no without being heard. 2 pause 1. The old estate board. Blue bishop 2 squares. Pause. Blue pawn 1. A second code. I returned to the chapel safe. Behind the first envelope was a false back panel. The pattern opened it. Inside lay Dad's original phone and a handwritten list of residents. 37 names. Each person died within 90 days of signing a legacy transfer. Beside 9 names, Dad had written Julian. Beside 11, Camille. Beside all 37, Diana. Aunt Rose's name appeared at the bottom. Beside it, first time I knew, Dad had known about Rose. He had not reported it. He remained married to Diana. He allowed Julian to manage the estate. He promoted. The secret will was not a dead man's heroic plan. It was the work of a coward who decided to become honest only after his family's crimes reached the person he loved most. Ben, the Rose file contained medical logs showing Diana had administered the fatal insulin dose through a guest profile. Altered the medication alert afterward. Julian persuaded the coroner not to pursue criminal review. Had been 27, old enough to know, young enough for Diana to call it protecting the family. I called my sister from a prepaid phone. She answered after 6 rings. "I know about Rose." "Silence. What do you want?" "My son, you are charged with murder. You altered Rose's log. I corrected a system error. Dad wrote your name." "What?" "Dad wrote many things when he wanted leverage." "Did Mom kill him?" Her breathing changed. That was the first honest answer. Whispered, "You do not understand what he was going to do." "What?" "He was going to destroy all of us." Then Julian's voice entered behind her. "Who are you speaking to?" The call ended. Had not Diana killed Dad? She had defended the reason. That was worse. A message arrived from Ben's school account. No words, only a photograph of the Blue King beside a white queen lying on its side. In Dad's chess lessons, the white queen represented Diana. The king was warning me. My son knew more than the adults thought he understood. Dad's funeral was held in the estate chapel, where he had hidden the second will. Julian argued I should not attend. The judge allowed it under police supervision, because barring a daughter from her father's funeral might prejudice the custody case. Reputation created doors evidence could not. I sat in the last pew between 2 officers. Sat in the front with Ben. Diana wore the missing chest cufflink pinned inside her black glove. She had taken it from Dad's body before the hospital. The other cufflink remained in the casket. Mr. Hale noticed. So did I. During the final hymn, Ben turned. His eyes found mine. He touched his left wrist where the bruise had faded. Then he looked toward the coffin. The Blue King did not only move backward, it moved toward the dead. After the service, mourners gathered at the estate. Julian remained near the judge who would officiate his wedding, kept Ben beside her. I asked to say goodbye to Dad. An officer accompanied me. The chapel emptied. Mr. Hale closed the doors but left the side latch open. Dad looked smaller without authority. I touched the remaining cufflink. It loosened. Beneath it, hidden inside the shirt cuff, was a second brass key. The first opened the safe. The second opened the envelope seal. Dad had made the secret will impossible to read with only one route. He expected family members to search his clothes. He expected someone to replace the cufflinks. He expected me to notice the missing pair. A complicated plan from a man who had ignored simpler choices while alive. I removed the key. The officer pretended not to see. Perhaps grief makes small conspirators of decent people. Behind me, the chapel door opened. Diana entered. She closed it. The officer stepped outside after she said the widow needed privacy. My mother stood beside the casket. You always turn mourning into investigation. You turned investigation into murder. Her eyes moved to my hand. What did Arthur leave? A reason to be frightened. She smiled slightly. Your father frightened people when he was too weak to act. Did you kill Rose? Rose was dying by inches and planned to leave the company to a church that hated us. That is not an answer. It is the only answer families ever receive. Diana touched Dad's cheek. No tenderness. Ownership. She said Arthur knew about every legacy transfer. He approved the early ones when faced bankruptcy. Residents without close heirs signed assets into the foundation in exchange for lifetime care. Then the program expanded. Julian found legal pathways, built predictive profiles, identifying residents unlikely to be challenged. Diana called it preservation. What changed? I asked. Your father became old enough to imagine he was one of the vulnerable people. He discovered Meridian Care planned to buy and audit the foundation. Exposure would destroy the family, imprison Diana and implicate. Dad decided to confess. Diana decided confession was betrayal. Did you inject him? She looked into the casket. He gave himself injections every day. Responsibility becomes difficult to locate. The answer was designed to avoid the word yes. I stepped closer. You used my medication. You sent the message. You made me open the cabinet. You opened it. I was drugged. You had already decided he was guilty. She treated intention as action when it belonged to me and circumstance when it belonged to her. Her gaze fixed on the key. Give me that. No. She reached. I moved back. The casket lid shifted. Dad's right hand had been arranged beneath the blanket. Something metallic slid onto the floor. A tiny voice recorder. Mr. Hale had not placed it there. Ben had. I recognized the sticker on the side from his science kit. He must have slipped it into the casket during the family viewing. Diana moved faster than I expected. She stepped on it. Plastic cracked beneath her heel. I pushed her away. The chapel doors opened. Stood there with Ben and Julian. Ben saw the broken recorder. His face collapsed. Grandma said Grandpa needed to hear the truth, he whispered. Diana recovered immediately. Ben placed a toy in the casket, became emotional, looked at the pieces, then at our mother. For half a second, suspicion crossed her face. Julian saw it. He placed one hand on his back. Let us not create a scene. The family's oldest command. I picked up the broken recorder. The memory card remained intact. Diana had destroyed the shell, not the file. Ben had hidden something with Dad, something he believed the dead needed to hear. The second key opened the will. The child's recorder would open the murder. Julian petitioned the court to end my supervised calls after the funeral. He claimed I had confronted Diana beside the body and frightened Ben. The judge termination, but ordered every future call recorded through his family app. Julian owned the app's legal vendor. Every word to my son would pass through the man trying to become his father. I stopped using words. During the next call, Ben held up drawings. A black house, a white dress, a red door, a clock at midnight, sat behind him addressing wedding invitations. Beautiful, I said. Ben drew a blue king outside the red door. The chapel safe had a red inner compartment I had not opened. The second brass key fit. Inside lay Dad's secret will, still sealed, and an old keypad showing recent access attempts. Someone had entered 4 failed codes after Dad died. The access log identified Julian's master credential. He knew the vault existed. He did not know Ben's chess code. That explained the rushed wedding. Julian feared whatever Dad left beneath the chapel would emerge before he gained control of the estate and could legally destroy it. I photographed the log. Detective obtained a limited warrant for Julian's office. Before officers arrived, the files burned in an electrical fire. Only one cabinet survived. It contained custody drafts written 2 weeks before Dad's death. The petition described me as a murder suspect before any murder occurred. Julian claimed the language was template text for possible incapacity. The document listed the date of Dad's death correctly, a future date when it was written. He blamed automatic updates. Software became the family's favorite ghost. Arrested doctor after pharmacy records showed he replaced my sleep tablets. He admitted Julian requested a memory interruption protocol for a family intervention. Julian told him Dad planned to confront me about financial misconduct and feared I might become violent. The doctor believed he was preventing conflict. He did not ask whether I consented. Everyone who harmed me believed another relative had already supplied permission. Doctor said he gave the sedative bottle too. She delivered it to my apartment with soup after Dad, and I argued. I remembered. She sat at my table, told me I looked exhausted and placed the pill beside my water. My sister did not merely alter evidence. She drugged me. I called her through the family app. You brought me the tablets. Her eyes widened. Julian sat outside the camera frame. I could see his reflection in the window. Said you asked for help sleeping. You knew what was inside. Julian said the dose would calm you before Dad spoke to you. Did you know I would go to the estate? No. Did you send Dad's message? No. The first answer I believed. Julian stepped into frame. This conversation is becoming accusatory. It is an accusation. He ended the call. Then he sent a formal letter stating any attempt to alienate Ben from would be used in the guardianship case. The person stealing my child accused me of creating distance. I opened Dad's secret will with the second key. It began with a confession. I, Arthur James Hart, knowingly concealed financial crimes, medical coercion, and the unlawful transfer of resident estates in order to preserve senior living and the reputation of my family. Dad named Diana as the organizer, Julian as legal architect, as data administrator, himself as beneficiary and cover, me as an auditor who identified irregularities, but accepted explanations I should have challenged earlier. No one remained clean. The will revoked every family inheritance. The house would be sold, would enter an independent restitution trust. Ben's shares would be held by a public guardian until 25. Any relative who sought custody while concealing a financial interest forfeited all claims and faced referral for fraud. Submergency petition triggered the clause. Julian's representation triggered it. Diana's concealment triggered it. The first will had rewarded the person who took Ben. The second will destroy them for doing it. But it was not yet valid. Dad required 3 conditions. The will had to be opened in the chapel, read aloud before 2 family members and 1 independent witness, and accompanied by his full final confession, stored on Ben's recorder. The memory card I recovered from the coffin held only 8 seconds of audio. Dad's voice said, "Blue King Midnight, do not trust the bride." Then static. The full confession remained somewhere else. Ben's drawing showed the white dress and red door. My sister's wedding was not only the deadline, it was the location of the missing recording. Julian released Dad's final video to the police before I could reveal the secret will. The video showed Arthur at his desk 2 days before his death. "If I die suddenly," he said, "should be investigated. She has threatened the company, accessed my medication, and become increasingly fixated on punishing this family." He described my mental health history. He described my argument. He said I wanted Ben's inheritance. The prosecutor upgraded the investigation from suspicious death to murder. My bail was revoked. I watched the video from a holding cell. Dad's face moved naturally. His voice carried the dry hesitation he had when reading prepared language. The room light reflected in his glasses. It looked real because most of it was. Found a compression break before every sentence containing my name. The original recording had been edited. The prosecution said editing did not prove reversal. Julian claimed Dad removed irrelevant material before saving the file. My lawyer asked whether I wanted to expose the secret will now. I said no. Without the confession recording, Julian would challenge execution. Diana would move the trust, would accelerate guardianship. The only chance to satisfy Dad's conditions was the wedding, where 2 family members, an independent officiant, and every interested party would be present. I needed to remain free. The prosecutor offered a plea, 12 years for manslaughter, immediate transfer of permanent guardianship too, waiver of all estate claims. Julian had written the family law provisions inside a criminal deal. I accepted in principle. My lawyer stared at me. I asked her to trust the board. We told the court I needed 1 week to review and sign. The wedding was in 6 days. News sites reported that I was preparing to confess. Gave an interview saying she felt heartbroken but relieved Ben could begin healing. Diana announced that I would be permitted to attend the wedding under supervision, as a final act of family unity. They wanted me there. A broken sister at the ceremony would validate their story. Julian sent me a dress code. Soft gray, no microphone, no direct contact with Ben unless authorized. No public statement. He had reduced me to an exhibit. I used the time to study Dad's final video. The unedited portions contained background details. A clock chimed once at 11:15. The estate clock only chimed on the hour. A second audio layer had been placed over the room. Behind Dad's shoulder, the mirror reflected a white sleeve. A bride's dress fitting had been in the study while he recorded. I confronted her during a supervised call. She looked exhausted. Dad asked me to sit there. Why? He was afraid you would accuse Julian of coercion. Was Julian present? No. Mom hesitated. The family app flashed a supervision warning. Someone was monitoring keywords. I changed the subject. Does your dress have sleeves? She understood. No. The white sleeve belonged to Diana's cream housecoat. Both women were present. Dad's statement had been coerced or negotiated. Whispered he made a deal. What deal? Stop. Did he agree to blame me? He agreed to protect Ben. The call ended. Dad had made a deal with the people he believed might kill him. Perhaps the video was the price. Perhaps the secret will was his betrayal of that deal. Visited the holding center with one new fact. The phrase, "If I die, did it," came from the edited video, not Dad's phone. His voicemail file had been generated by exporting a segment of the video and uploading it to his device after death. Whoever handled Dad's phone after paramedics arrived created the dying accusation. Julian signed the property release and removed the phone from evidence for 19 minutes under attorney privilege. He had built the sentence. Could prove access, not intention. I told her about the wedding plan. She said it was reckless. Yes. You could sign the plea before you get the recording. Yes. You could lose Ben permanently. Yes. What do you need from me? An independent witness inside the chapel. She considered the question. Then she said, the wedding officiant is Judge Mercer, the same judge who granted emergency custody. Not independent. Julian had selected every person required to validate or defeat the secret will. Said she could attend as security liaison if the family agreed. They would never agree. Unless they believed she came to witness my confession. I sent Julian a condition for signing the plea. I would make a brief apology at the wedding and sign before detective. As proof no coercion occurred, Julian accepted within 7 minutes. He needed the murder detective to see me surrender. He did not know she would become the independent witness Dad's will require. The board was becoming smaller. Aunt Rose left one surviving witness. Her name was Helen Park, a night nurse at house. She resigned the week after Rose died and moved to a coastal town under her middle name. Detective found her through pension records. Helen remembered Diana entering Rose's room at 1:10 a.m. with the smart medication cart. Arrived 15 minutes later carrying a laptop. Julian came before sunrise with revised estate documents. Helen reported the sequence to Arthur. He asked her to wait until he reviewed the data. Then he paid her a settlement and required silence. Dad did not merely know. He stopped the first witness. Helen kept one piece of evidence. A printed alert showing Rose's glucose level was normal before the fatal insulin dose. The electronic version vanished. She agreed to attend the wedding only if she could sit near an exit. The second family murder was becoming a room full of ghosts. The resident list revealed the same pattern. Diana identified assets. Julian created charitable transfer instruments. Software classified residents by likelihood of family challenge. Arthur signed board approvals. When residents resisted or changed their minds, medical incidents accelerated. Not every death was murder. That did not make the system less monstrous. It made the line harder to prosecute. One name on Dad's list stopped me. Hart. My husband. He died 5 years earlier in a single-car accident after visiting archive building. The police blamed wet roads. Had been external cybersecurity consultant. He discovered the legacy transfer profiles. I had always believed his final visit concerned ransomware. Dad's file contained a note. EVANCOPIED Rose data. Diana saw the camera. My mother knew had evidence. His car's maintenance was performed by a fleet contractor 2 days before the crash. The brake sensor failed. I called. She warned that connection did not prove murder. The family had taught me to fear uncertainty, and now grief wanted certainty as revenge. I searched old cloud storage instead. One encrypted folder remained unopened because the password hint read first home. I had tried our first address, wedding date, and Ben's birthday. The answer was not a place. It was a sentence said, when we brought Ben home from the hospital. No one gets to turn love into debt. The folder opened. Had Rose's medication logs, legacy transfers, and messages between Julian and Diana. He planned to give them to Arthur because he believed Dad did not know. A final draft email remained unsent. Arthur, if you already know, then is in danger from all of you. Understood my father before I did. The folder also contained an audio file recorded in his car 20 minutes before the crash. Dad's voice came through the speakerphone. Give me the copy, I will handle Diana. Said you had 4 years. Dad replied, If learns everything at once, she will burn the family down. She deserves the truth. She deserves a father. The call ended. Dad wanted the evidence, not necessarily to expose it, maybe to bury it again. I listened for another voice. At the final second, the car door opened, said, "My sister was the last known person with my husband." I called her, this time no supervised app. A direct number Helen found inside old nursing records. Answered quietly, "You found his file. Were you in the car?" "Yes." "Did you kill him?" "No." "Did you damage the brakes?" "No." "Why were you there?" "Mom sent me to take the drive." "Did you?" "Yes." "Did you know the car had been touched?" "No." Her breath broke, said refused to hand over the drive. They argued. He pushed her out of the car. She called Diana and said he was heading to Dad. Diana told her not to worry. 40 minutes later, crashed. Learned about the brake service years later. "She never told me. You held Ben at his father's funeral." "I know. You watched me blame myself for asking him to work late." "I know. You became his favorite aunt." "I loved him." The sentence made me furious. Love had become the family's permission slip. "You took my son. I thought Dad's death proved Mom was right about you. Mom killed Dad. Dad was going to destroy everything. So you knew." "I knew she would stop him. I did not know how." A coward's distinction. I asked where Dad's final confession was. Said Julian hid a recorder inside the wedding chapel because Dad threatened to play it at the board meeting. Julian planned to retrieve it after the ceremony when he controlled the estate. "Where?" "I do not know." "Ben does." Silence. Whispered, "He keeps drawing the red door." "Why have you not asked him?" "Because Mom watches him now." My sister had taken my child for control and become frightened of the woman she delivered him to. I said, "Help me get him out." She answered, "I cannot lose everything." "Not I cannot. I will not." The wedding would decide whether remained my mother's daughter or became herself. I stopped expecting the better choice. Met me in the courthouse garage 2 days before the wedding. She wore sunglasses, though it was raining. I wore an electronic monitor and carried the unsigned plea agreement inside my bag. For the first time since Dad died, we stood without Julian, Diana, police, or a camera close enough to shape our faces. Said she did not plan to take Ben permanently. She filed emergency custody because Julian told her I would be arrested that morning and state services might place Ben with strangers. Then why the guardianship petition? Dads will require a stable guardian for the trust. You mean control? I mean protecting the company from Meridian Care by marrying the lawyer who wrote the will. Her mouth tightened. She said employed 9,000 people. If the legacy fraud became public without an orderly sale, residents would lose care, pensions would collapse, and facilities would close. The family's crimes had grown large enough to hold innocent people hostage. Julian promised to sell the company, repay hidden transfers quietly, and preserve jobs. He needed Ben's vote. Convinced herself stealing my son was temporary stewardship. Did you tell him that? He is 9. You told him I was dangerous. He heard the news. You made him call you Mom. Her face changed. That was Diana. But you sat beside him. Began crying. I did not comfort her. Tears are information, not absolution. She said Diana kept Ben at the estate because he heard something the night Dad died. After brought me the sedative, she returned home. At 10:18, Diana left the chapel passage. Ben was awake in the library playing chess with Dad's old recorder. Diana told him Grandpa had gone to sleep. Later, Ben told he heard Grandma and Grandpa arguing through the red door. What did he hear? He would not tell me. He said Grandpa made him promise the Blue King waits until the wedding. Dad had involved a child in his dead man plan. Another unforgivable choice disguised as protection. Said Julian found one recorder and destroyed it. Ben had hidden another. The full confession might be inside his chess clock. At the wedding, Ben would carry the rings in a wooden chess box Dad made. Diana chose it for photographs. The evidence would enter the chapel in her own ceremony. Why tell me, I asked. Looked toward the garage exit. Because Mom changed the adoption paperwork. It no longer granted and Julian guardianship until I completed treatment. It terminated my parental rights based on the plea and named Diana as successor guardian if marriage ended or she faced charges. Diana intended to control Ben regardless of what happened to her daughter. Had finally discovered the predator did not love the favored child more. She simply used her differently. Will you testify? I asked. No. Will you give Ben back? After the wedding. Why after? Julian needs to complete the sale agreement first. She still wanted the money. Fear had cracked her loyalty, not replaced it. I told her about the secret will. Went white. If Dad revoked everything, Meridian will take the debt. The restitution trust will manage the company. Employees will panic. You mean you lose control? I spent 15 years building. You spent 15 years ranking which grieving families would notice stolen estates. She slapped me. The sound echoed across the garage. Then she whispered, "You left." There it was. The oldest wound. I went to university, moved away, married, and built a life outside. Stayed beside Dad and Diana, learning that sacrifice entitled her to ownership. You could have left too. Someone had to remain. No, someone had to believe remaining was noble. She stepped back. For a second, I saw the girl who used to sleep in my room when our parents fought. Then she put the sunglasses on. She gave me the wedding schedule and the chapel security code. Ben enters at 6:55. The ceremony begins at 7. The estate clock chimes at midnight, but the Blue King phrase means the chess clock's midnight setting. Will you stand with me? No. Then stand out of the way. Left. She was not the mastermind. She was more difficult. A mastermind can be exposed. Was a person who understood the harm, feared the architect, loved the child, wanted the reward, and kept choosing whichever truth allowed her to delay courage. That kind of family betrayal does not arrive in one moment. It accumulates through every door a person could have opened. Julian's wedding office contained Ben's original birth file. Detective found it during a search for the forged custody drafts. The file should have been sealed after his death. Inside was a paternity affidavit, my postpartum treatment notes, and a document transferring emergency guardianship to Arthur and Diana if I became medically incapacitated. My signature appeared at the bottom. I had never seen it. Julian said I signed during the week after Ben was born. I remembered that week only in flashes. Sleeping in a chair, Dad bringing flowers, Diana correcting how I held the baby, taking photographs, a nurse giving me medication after a panic episode. The witness signature belonged to Dr. Julian had been the hospital's estate counsel. They created a guardianship route before I left the maternity ward. The family had prepared to own my child from his first day. Forensic examiner found the signature from a mortgage document. Forgery. The guardianship transfer was never valid. Julian used it anyway in the emergency petition. The birth file contained another surprise. Dad had named an alternate guardian in his original estate plan. Helen Park, Aunt Rose's nurse. Arthur trusted the employee. He silenced more than his wife or daughters. Then he removed her after Diana threatened to expose the settlement. Dad's attempts at courage always arrived with a private escape route. Planned to arrest Julian before the wedding for document fraud. I asked her to wait. If he is arrested, Diana cancels everything and moves Ben. You are asking me to delay an arrest around a child. I am asking you to protect the child before the people controlling him know their plan failed. She hated it. So did I. We arranged officers outside the estate under the excuse of wedding security. Helen would attend as a guest. My lawyer would carry the secret will, would witness the reading. I would retrieve the confession from Ben's chess box. Simple plans are the ones most likely to be missing a betrayal. Julian called me that afternoon. He knew the birth file had been found. He said the forged guardianship was created by Dad, not him. Your signature authenticated the filing. Under instruction, you always have an instruction. Law is instruction. No, law is where you hide the person choosing. He invited me to his office. Against advice, I went. He had removed photographs, client files, and personal objects. The room looked prepared for evacuation. Julian poured tea. I did not drink. He said Diana killed Arthur. The first direct statement any family member gave. She used you to open the cabinet, he said. Altered the access log. I created the voicemail. We all believed the secret will would destroy before we could protect the residents. You framed me for murder to protect residents. To preserve time. How much? Until the sale. And Ben. Custody secured the vote. He said the guardianship would have been reversed after Meridian completed the purchase. Believed that too. What did Mom believe? Julian looked toward the window. Diana does not reverse control. He offered a deal. At the wedding, he would help me recover Ben and expose Diana. In return, the secret will remain sealed until after the company sale. Would keep a minority stake. Julian would receive immunity through cooperation. He wanted to betray the mastermind and preserve the reward. I asked about Aunt Rose. He admitted changing the medication record. He admitted drafting the fleet contractor's confidentiality agreement after the crash. Did you know the brakes were sabotaged? I suspected. Did you ask? No. The family's anthem. Julian said he loved. I believed him. He also viewed her as the legitimate Hart heir, the person disciplined enough to preserve what I would dismantle. Love and hierarchy fit comfortably inside him. I asked why he was marrying her now. The trust vote. At least one honest answer. He slid a copy of Ben's adoption petition across the desk. Diana had added a confidential provision. After the wedding, Julian and would sign. At midnight, the judge would enter the order. The chess clock's midnight setting was not only Dad's code, it was the legal deadline. Once the adoption order entered, Diana planned to report Julian and for financial fraud. They would lose custody. She would become successor guardian and control Ben's trust alone. Diana intended to sacrifice the bride and groom after using them. Julian had discovered the clause that morning. Does no. No. Why not? If she panics, Diana moves first. Even when he told the truth, he believed only he could decide when others deserved it. I stood. Julian asked whether I accepted his deal. No. You cannot beat Diana without someone inside. I have someone. No. My son. Julian's face changed. Adults in this family kept forgetting the child had listened to every lie. The wedding would not be won by the cleverest lawyer. It would be opened by the person they treated as property. House transformed itself for the wedding. White flowers covered the staircase where paramedics carried Dad's body. Gold fabric hid the study door. The chapel floor had been polished until the stone reflected every guest. A family can decorate the scene of a crime faster than it can admit one. I arrived in the gray dress Julian selected. An electronic monitor circled my ankle. Detective walked beside me carrying the unsigned plea in a black folder. News cameras waited outside the gate. Diana had invited them to record a family choosing healing. I was the wound they planned to display as closed. Wore our grandmother's wedding dress. Long white sleeves. The same sleeves reflected in Dad's final video. She had been trying it on while he recorded the accusation. When she saw me, her face did not change. Julian kissed her cheek. Diana took Ben's hand. He wore a small navy suit and carried the wooden chess box. The blue king was painted on top. I looked at the estate clock. 6:54. The ceremony began at 7. The adoption order would enter at midnight. Dad's confession had to play before then. Crossed the foyer and stopped beside me. You came. You invited my confession. Her eyes moved toward the black folder. Are you signing? Yes. The lie hurt her more than relief would have. Perhaps she wanted me to fight so she could call herself reluctant. The chapel doors opened. Judge Mercer stood beneath the altar as officiant. 2 board directors sat in the front row. Meridian Care executives occupied the second. The wedding was also a corporate closing. Ben walked down the aisle. When he passed me, he dropped 1 ring. The chess box opened. Inside lay 2 rings, a velvet cushion, and the old blue and white chess clock. Diana picked up the ring. Ben looked at me. 2 taps. Pause. 1. I touched my wrist. He understood. During the vows, Julian promised to protect from every danger, known and unknown. Promised loyalty. Diana watched like a person signing a contract. At 7:28, the judge pronounced them married. Applause filled the chapel. Then Julian announced a family statement. He invited me to the altar. The room changed. Guests raised phones. Diana smiled. This was the image she wanted. The disgraced daughter accepting responsibility at the golden daughter's wedding. I stood beside. Ben remained near the altar holding the chess box. Julian opened the black folder. I took the plea agreement. My father believed family required sacrifice, I said. Diana's smile widened. He was right about one thing. This family has sacrificed people for years. Julian reached for the microphone. Detectives stepped between us. I continued. Aunt Rose, 37 residents. Arthur, my son. The judge ordered me to stop. My lawyer entered through the side door carrying the sealed second will. Helen Park stood behind her. The first family member was. The second was Diana. The independent witness was. Dad's conditions were present. Julian said the document was invalid. I held up the second brass key. The seal opened. The chapel lights flickered. Diana looked toward the organ loft. Someone had entered the security room. The chess clock in Ben's hands began ticking backward. Midnight mode. Its base opened. A small recorder slid onto the cushion. Ben had carried Dad's confession into the wedding. Julian moved toward him, stepped between them. For 1 second, she chose the child. Then Diana said, "Give me the box." My sister froze. Every person in the chapel watched her become a daughter again. Ben held the recorder against his chest. Diana walked forward. "You do not understand what is inside." He said, "Grandpa said you would say that." The microphone carried his voice through the room. Diana stopped. The child had answered her script. I began reading the secret will. Arthur confessed to legacy fraud, medical coercion, hidden settlements, and the concealment of Rose's death. Guests shifted. Meridian executives stood. The judge ordered security. The estate guards did not move, had replaced them with police. Julian attempted to leave. The chapel doors locked. Not by us. Diana held the master estate remote. She had sealed everyone inside. The adoption hearing was supposed to begin at midnight. Instead, the wedding had become a crime scene with every beneficiary present. Diana looked at Ben. "Play the recorder, and your mother goes to prison too." Ben turned toward me. The final trap was not whether the confession exposed my family. It was what Dad had recorded about me. The chapel fell silent around my son. Ben was 9 years old, holding a device adults had turned into a weapon. I wanted to tell him not to play it. That would make me another relative asking a child to protect me from truth. "Whatever is on it," I said, "you are not responsible for what happens." Diana laughed softly. That is a beautiful thing to say after using him to open the vault. She was right enough to wound. Dad used Ben's chess lessons to hide evidence. I used his drawings to retrieve it. Julian and used custody to control shares. Every adult had placed weight in his hands. I stepped away from the altar. "Give the recorder to detective." Ben did. Diana pressed the estate remote. Metal shutters dropped over the chapel windows. The lights went out. Emergency lamps glowed red. Guests screamed. Diana said the system had entered fire lockdown. The doors would remain sealed until she released them. Moved toward her. Julian grabbed the remote first. He had decided Diana was more dangerous than the truth. Struck his arm. The remote fell beneath a pew. Husband and wife turned on each other 30 minutes after their vows. I reached Ben. Reached him too. He flinched from both of us. That was the real result of our fight. Not who held custody, whom he expected to grab. I stopped moving. "Ben, go to Helen." The nurse stood near the side aisle. He ran to her. A smoke alarm began sounding. This time, smoke entered the chapel. Diana had triggered the archive room incinerator beneath the organ loft. Fire moved through the old ventilation system toward the vault. She intended to destroy the original will and Dad's remaining records, while everyone remained locked inside. Julian found the remote, but the doors rejected him. Diana had transferred master control to Ben's trust profile after the wedding ceremony. The legal guardian's biometric now controlled the estate. She placed her hand on the altar scanner. Access DNID. The adoption order had not entered. Temporary guardian authority had expired when the secret will triggered forfeiture. The system displayed Ben Hart, beneficial owner. A 9-year-old had master control. Julian lifted him toward the scanner. Ben kicked him. I pulled Julian away. He shouted that the fire doors required Ben's hand. Diana said, "Then make him do it." There was the family principle in its form. Ownership meant obedience. I knelt several feet from Ben. "The scanner opens the doors. You can choose. What if it is another trick?" "I don't know." The answer steadied him. Adults who always knew had become dangerous. Ben walked to the scanner on his own. He placed his palm against it. The doors opened. Guests poured into the foyer. Smoke followed. Carried the recorder. My lawyer carried the secret will. Helen carried nothing, keeping both hands free for Ben. Diana remained near the altar. Called to her, "Mom, come." Diana looked toward the burning organ loft. The rose file is still inside. She moved toward the stairs. Followed. For one terrible second, my sister still chose our mother. Julian ran toward the exit. Arrested him in the doorway. I could leave. Ben was safe. The will was safe. The confession was safe. Had made her choice. Then I heard the loft floor crack. I went back, not because blood required loyalty, because I refused to let Diana turn another death into a story about what everyone else forced her to do. The stairwell burned along one side, stood beneath a fallen beam, her dress on fire at the sleeve. Diana had reached the archive cabinet and was trying to carry a box of paper records instead of helping her daughter. I pulled free and smothered the flame with my gray dress. Diana looked at us. "You always rescue her after she betrays you," she said. "No." I dragged toward the stairs. "I rescue people. What happens after is different." The loft collapsed behind us. Diana dropped the archive box. For the first time, she had to choose between evidence and her own body. She followed us out. Police arrested her on the chapel steps while wedding guests filmed. The image spread before midnight. The The bride with a burned sleeve, the groom in handcuffs, the widow covered in ash, the accused daughter holding no one, the child beside an independent witness. They thought the wedding would show I had broken. Instead, every person saw who kept trying to own the ending. At 11:58 p.m., the adoption judge convened an emergency hearing inside the estate ballroom. The chapel was unsafe. The wedding guests remained as witnesses. Police secured Diana and Julian in separate rooms, sat beneath a blanket with a bandage around her arm. Ben sat beside Helen Park, not any relative. The secret will lay on the table. Dad had required the document to be read in the chapel, and I had completed the relevant provisions before the evacuation. Julian argued smoke interrupted execution. My lawyer argued the interruption was caused by a beneficiary attempting to destroy evidence. Judge Mercer looked ill. He had officiated a wedding, planned an adoption, and discovered his own custody order rested on forged records within 5 hours. At midnight, the chess clock chimed. The second will's digital registry activated automatically. Dad had deposited an encrypted copy with 3 independent trustees. Opening the physical seal triggered release if the code matched. It matched. The public will was revoked. Diana lost the house, lost the personal estate. Ben's trust moved to independent administration. Senior living entered restitution management. Every legacy transfer would be audited. The Meridian sale stopped. Julian stood to object, entered with the recovered memory card. Sit down. She played Dad's full confession. Arthur appeared in the study on the afternoon before his death. No edits, no family-approved background. He looked exhausted. I created a company that taught us to treat care as ownership, he said. Diana expanded theft. Julian made it lawful enough to survive, made it efficient. Found pieces and accepted answers because the full truth would cost her father. I closed my eyes. He named my compromise. When I first found the legacy transfers, Dad told me they were temporary bridge loans preserving resident care. I wrote an internal memo instead of reporting regulators. I chose family over strangers because the harm remained abstract. Dad continued. I concealed Rose's death. I silenced Helen Park. I removed her as Ben's alternate guardian. I allowed postpartum records to become leverage. I knew evidence and demanded he give it to me before he confronted Diana. I began crying. Diana stared at the floor. Arthur said he intended to confess at the board meeting and place into restitution. Diana threatened to expose my audit delay and unauthorized access, ensuring I faced charges too. He agreed to record a statement, implicating me in exchange for Ben remaining outside the company trust. Then he wrote the secret will anyway. I believed I could outmaneuver the people I trained to treat trust as weakness, he said. That vanity may kill me. The video shifted to the night of his death. Dad had activated a hidden recorder inside Ben's chess clock before Diana entered. We heard the chapel passage open. Diana said, "You signed the first will." Dad answered, "It is bait." Her breathing changed. He told her the second will would expose everything if sought custody. Diana said, "Would not need custody if I accepted criminal responsibility." Dad laughed once. "You drugged the wrong daughter if you expect obedience." Then my voice entered. "This ends tonight." The line from the security video. Dad answered, "Take the pen and leave through the chapel." I had entered under sedation. He knew. He used me too. He placed the insulin pen in my hand and told me to move it to the library safe, believing Diana planned to use it. I obeyed, barely conscious. After I left, Dad confronted Diana. He said he had the confession into Ben's clock during their afternoon chess game. Diana asked where it was. He refused. We heard a struggle. The smart pen cabinet opened. Dad said, "You cannot call this preserving family anymore." Diana answered, "Family is the only reason anyone will forgive us." The injection clicked. Arthur gasped. Then's voice entered through the passage. "Mom." My sister was there. She saw Dad on the floor. She saw Diana holding the pen. Whispered, "What did you do?" Diana said, "What you were too frightened to do." The recording continued. Could have called emergency services. Instead, she called Julian. He arrived. They moved the pen, altered the log, created the voicemail, and placed my scarf beneath the desk. Did not kill Dad. She watched him die while protecting the killer. At the ballroom table, she folded over herself. Ben looked at her, not with hatred, with the stunned distance of a child realizing an adult's love did not make them safe. Dad's confession ended with one final statement. "Do not inherit my company. Inherit the obligation to tell the truth even when it removes you from the center of rescue." The secret will did not make me heir. It made me a witness. At midnight, adoption petition became legally impossible. Ben's temporary custody order was suspended. The judge asked where he wanted to stay until a full hearing. He looked at me, then at Helen. With Mom, he said. He did not run into my arms. Trust does not return because a document changes. I nodded. I will be there when you are ready. For the first time, no relative answered for him. Dad's confession opened criminal cases, civil claims, guardianship reviews, medical investigations, and a corporate collapse. It did not explain why I still missed him. People wanted grief to follow evidence. Once the dead man confessed to cowardice, control, and concealment, love was expected to become embarrassment. Instead, memories arrived without legal organization. Dad teaching me spreadsheets at the kitchen table. Dad refusing to attend my university award because Diana disliked the dean. Dad holding Ben after died. Dad telling me to stop asking about Rose. The same person. No verdict could make him one thing. The prosecutor, the murder charge against me, but continued investigating my role in audits. Julian's forged voicemail and custody documents became obstruction evidence. Doctor cooperated. Helen gave her statement. The residents' families formed a claim group. Ben returned to my apartment under a temporary plan, supervised by an independent guardian. He slept with the door locked for the first week. He asked whether police would take me again. I said I did not know. He asked whether Aunt loved him. Yes. Then why did she keep me? Because love did not stop her wanting other things more. He thought about that. Do you love Grandpa? Yes. Was he bad? He did bad things. He did some good things. He waited too long to tell the truth. Ben looked at the wooden blue king on his bedside table. Did he use me? Yes. The answer hurt him. I did not replace it with intention. Dad believed the chess game protected Ben. He still placed a child inside a murder plan. At the custody review, requested supervised contact. My first instinct was no. Then I remembered how easily adults called control protection. The independent guardian recommended Ben decide after therapy. He chose one letter, no visits. Wrote 6 pages. The guardian gave him only the first, after confirming no manipulation. Said she loved him, had no right to ask forgiveness, and would answer any question without blaming Diana. Ben did not reply. That was his choice. Diana's defense argued Arthur's recording was inadmissible because he engineered the confrontation and manipulated events through the will. The argument carried truth. Dad created bait. He anticipated custody. He used a sedated daughter to move evidence. He let Ben carry the confession. His methods were controlling, even when his goal became exposure. The judge still admitted the recording alongside physical evidence. Truth does not become false because the witness is guilty of control. Entered a cooperation agreement. She admitted altering Rose's medication log, Dad's access data, and my security footage. She admitted delaying emergency care while Arthur died. In return, prosecutors reduced the murder conspiracy charge. News commentators called her the sister who turned against the family. That was not accurate. She turned after the family turned against her. Motive mattered. It did not erase the evidence. At a pretrial meeting, asked to see me. We sat across a steel table. Her burned arm remained bandaged. You saved me, she said. Yes. Why? Because you were on fire. That is all. That is enough. She looked wounded. She wanted rescue to mean reconciliation. Our family had always converted care into debt. I refused. Said she thought Diana would call an ambulance after the paperwork was fixed. She kept waiting for our mother to finish controlling the scene. Dad stopped breathing first. You watched? Yes. You called Julian? Yes. You put my scarf under the desk? Yes. You took Ben? Yes. Each answer arrived without explanation. I respected that more than tears. Then she asked whether Dad's confession proved he loved me more. The question surprised me. Even now, beneath murder and custody, the old competition remained. No, he trusted you with the second will. He used me to finish what he delayed. He left me bait. Yes. Her face crumpled. The golden child discovered being favored did not mean being loved safely. I did not comfort her. I did not punish her with silence either. Dad built roles for both of us. You stayed inside yours longer. Looked toward the guard. Is there any way we become sisters again? We never stopped being sisters. Hope appeared. I continued. That does not mean you return to my life. Blood described the harm. It did not require access. When I left, remained at the table. For the first time, I did not feel responsible for how she survived my boundary. cooperation collapsed 2 weeks before Diana's trial. Her statement and claimed detectives pressured her while she was medicated for burns. Julian's lawyer released messages asking how to preserve Diana's defense. The bride had chosen our mother again. The prosecutor called me furious. Without, the defense could argue the voices on Dad's recorder had been, or edited. Physical evidence still linked Diana to the insulin pen, but systems had been altered so extensively that every log invited doubt. I visited in detention. Why? She looked thinner. Mom said she will take full responsibility for Rose and the legacy transfers if I deny being in the study. Dad's recording has your voice. What? Julian says authentication can be challenged. What does Mom give you? A chance to avoid prison. There it was. Diana still knew the right lever. Said Julian would testify the framing plan belonged to him. Diana would admit confronting Dad but deny injecting him. The case would become technical uncertainty. And Ben looked away. Diana promised not to seek custody again. A promise from the woman who built every legal route around the child. You believe her? No, but you choose her. I choose not spending 20 years in prison. Honest, I could not pretend the choice was easy. I could still name the cost. You are asking Dad's murder to become uncertain so you feel safer. His eyes hardened. You took the plea when you thought it would get Ben back. I delayed it to expose the truth. You were willing to... Yes. The answer stopped her. I had also stood near the edge of sacrificing truth for my child. The difference was not moral purity. It was what I finally chose. Said you had evidence, I have Mom. No, Mom has you. She ended the meeting. That night, Ben asked to hear Dad's full recording. The guardian advised waiting. Ben said adults had already decided what he could hear, while using what he heard. We played selected portions with his therapist. He listened to Dad mention the chess clock. He listened to Diana say family was the only reason anyone would forgive them. He listened to enter. He stopped the file before the injection. I heard more, he said. The room became still. Ben described hiding in the library cupboard during the argument. Dad knew he was there. Arthur told him to stay silent and record everything if the White Queen moved backward. The chess clock captured only the study microphone. Ben's science recorder captured the hallway. Diana stepped on the recorder at the funeral, but the memory card survived. The 8-second file recovered was not the full card. It contained a hidden partition. Dad taught Ben to hide files during a school computer project. The partition required a child-created password. Do you remember it? I asked. Ben looked at the Blue King. The sentence. I had told it to Ben once. He remembered what I forgot. The hidden audio opened. After entered the study, Dad begged her to call an ambulance. Diana ordered her not to. Julian arrived and said paramedics could still reverse the dose if called immediately. Asked then why are we waiting? Diana answered, because if he lives, he destroys you. Silence. Dad said, please. My sister whispered, I'm sorry. Then she closed the study door. The audio captured deliberate choice. Heard that the dose was reversible. She chose inheritance over rescue. The cooperation deal was no longer necessary for identification. Ben's hidden recording carried her decision. I told him the file could send his aunt to prison. He began shaking. I did that. No, I recorded it. You were a child following Grandpa's instruction. What? If I give it to police, Aunt goes away. Yes. What happens if I do? The trial may not show what happened. He asked what I wanted. Every part of me wanted to answer. I said, this is too large for you to choose alone. The guardian and court will decide how to preserve it. You can tell us how you feel. I want the truth. I don't want to be the reason. You are not the reason. The people on the recording made the choices. He cried against my shoulder for the first time since returning home. The file went to through the guardian. Learned the next morning. She called me from detention. You used him. No. Dad used him. You finished it. The accusation carried enough truth to hurt. I should have found another way. What? There was no other way. That is what Mom always says. We both went silent. The family's most dangerous sentence had entered my mouth without being spoken. No other way. I promised Ben I would never ask him to carry adult evidence again. Her withdrawal and restored her cooperation. Not from courage, because the hidden recording removed the benefit of silence. She chose truth only after the lies stopped protecting her. The court could still use the truth. I did not have to call the choice noble. Diana's trial was televised because the scandal had become a national story about elder exploitation, family trusts, and private guardianship. The prosecution wanted to play Ben's hidden recording through a forensic technician. Diana's lawyers argued the child should testify about how he created it. I refused. The guardian refused. The judge ruled Ben would not enter the courtroom. Then Diana requested to address him through a recorded statement. She said she wanted to apologize. The judge allowed a written message reviewed by the guardian. It contained one sentence for Ben. Your grandfather made you spy because your mother taught him love must prove itself. Diana could turn an apology into a blade with 12 words. Ben asked to attend the evidence playback remotely from a child advocacy room. The therapist approved. He wanted to hear the whole file once, with adults unable to stop at the parts that protected them. The recording played. Dad confronting Diana. The injection. Entering. Julian explaining reversal remained possible. Closing the door. Then a final segment no one had heard. After Dad became silent, Diana and Julian left to alter the study. Remained. She knelt beside him. Dad's breathing returned faintly. He was still alive. Whispered, "Tell me where the second will is." Arthur did not answer. She said, "I can call them, tell me. My sister tried to trade rescue for inheritance." Dad moved. A single word. Ben understood the evidence involved my son. She searched the room. Dad whispered, "Do not touch him." Replied, "Then give me the company." The recording ended. She had not only delayed rescue, she negotiated with a dying man. The courtroom heard it. Watched from the witness room. Her cooperation agreement was revoked. Prosecutors added attempted extortion and murder conspiracy. Diana remained expressionless until the prosecutor asked whether she trained her daughters to treat love as exchange. Her lawyer objected. The judge sustained it. The question remained in the room. Diana, she said Dad was an abusive patriarch who controlled money, health care, reputation, and access to the family. She described decades of coercion. Some of it was true. She said Rose begged to die. Unproven. She said Arthur injected himself and forced everyone to cover it. Contradicted. She said I manipulated Ben's recorder. Forensics contradicted that too. Then she said acted from fear. True. The prosecution asked whether fear justified withholding an ambulance. Diana answered, "Families make decisions outsiders never have to understand." The jury understood enough. They convicted her of Arthur's murder, conspiracy connected to Rose's death, fraud, coercive administration of medication, and multiple elder exploitation offenses. They acquitted her of murder because evidence did not establish who sabotaged the car. That uncertainty hurt. It was still the correct verdict. We did not convert suspicion into certainty because the family had done it to me. Julian pleaded guilty before trial. He received a substantial sentence and permanent disbarment. Doctor lost his license and served a reduced term for cooperation. Went to trial separately. She was convicted of conspiracy, evidence tampering, failure to obtain medical aid, custody fraud, and financial offenses. The jury did not convict her of murder. They believed Diana administered the dose, and later decisions supported the death without proving she shared the original plan. Legal categories did not match emotional reality. Ben never entered the courthouse. He did not watch verdict coverage. On the evening Diana was convicted, he set the blue king in the center of the board. Is it over? The trial is. The family. I looked around our small apartment. 2 plates in the sink. His school bag by the door. His photograph on the shelf. The part that controls us can be. He moved the king 1 square backward. Grandpa said kings hate moving back because it looks like losing. What do you think? Sometimes you need to see what you stepped on. The sentence sounded older than 9. That frightened me. Children around damaged adults become wise too early and are praised for surviving what made them wise. I told him he did not need to understand everything. He said good. Then he asked whether we could order pizza. We did. No confession, no chess code, no hidden file. An ordinary dinner became the first thing the family had not turned into evidence. The wedding guests became witnesses in 12 separate proceedings. Board members about the Meridian sale. Residents, relatives about legacy transfers. The officiating judge about Julian's undisclosed financial interest in the custody petition. Photographers supplied images of Diana's remote, the locked chapel, and the fire. The family invited cameras to manufacture innocence. The cameras preserved exposure instead. Senior living entered public receivership. The independent trustee sold non-essential property, repaid resident estates, and kept the facilities operating under new boards that included residents and staff. No dramatic collapse, no heroic air, The company survived by ceasing to belong to the family. The estate house was the most contested asset. Diana claimed spousal rights, claimed Dad promised it to her. I had no claim under the secret will. Ben's trust could have purchased it. He said no. Too many doors. The house sold. Part of the proceeds funded restitution. Part funded legal services for people targeted by abusive guardianship petitions. Mr. Hale returned Dad's remaining cufflink. I placed both inside the evidence archive with the keys. Objects lose some power when they stop being private symbols. News producers asked me to tell the story. They wanted the wedding, fire, murder, secret will, and child recorder. They wanted a title that made the villain, and me, the avenging mother. I declined most. The simplest version would erase Dad's guilt, my audit delay, Ben's burden, Diana's history with Arthur, and the residents beneath the inheritance fight. Pain becomes entertainment fastest when relatives fit fixed roles. One producer offered enough money to secure Ben's education. For 3 days, I considered it. Then I asked him. He said, would they play the recording? Yes. Then no. A child set the boundary adults kept failing to. I took a job with the Restitution Trust reviewing records. Some families hated seeing Arthur's daughter inside the process. Reasonable. I worked under supervision and had no authority over claims involving my own reports. The first case involved a woman named Moss, whose savings entered the foundation after her death. Her son had been estranged for 20 years and returned only after learning about the money. Classified him as unlikely to challenge. He still deserved the truth. Restitution was not a reward for perfect families. At sentencing, she apologized to Ben. The judge stopped her from addressing him directly. She said she had loved him like a son. The prosecutor replied that she used that love to justify taking his mother. Inheritance and choices. Received 12 years. Some commentators called it excessive because she did not inject Dad. Others called it lenient because he might have survived if she called for help. Sentences could not measure every betrayal. She wrote Ben monthly. He kept the letters unopened in a box. Not discarded. Not read. His decision remained unfinished. Diana never wrote. Control dislikes communication it cannot direct. 1 year after the wedding, Ben asked whether we could visit. I said yes, after discussing it with his therapist and guardian. The prison visit lasted 20 minutes. Looked older. Ben asked one question. Did you want to be my mom? She said yes. Did you want the company more? Began crying. Yes. He nodded. Then he asked to leave. In the parking lot, he said, I thought the answer would make me feel something. Did it? Tired. We drove home. He did not owe her relief, punishment, or closure. The wedding guests had become witnesses. Ben did not need to remain one forever. Appealed her conviction 3 times. The third appeal argued Dad's hidden recording violated her expectation of privacy inside the family home. The court rejected it because Arthur recorded his own study, and Ben independently recorded the hallway. Sent me the appeal through her lawyer with a handwritten note. I am not asking you to lie. I am asking you to say I was afraid. I replied through counsel. You were afraid. That statement entered the record. It did not change the conviction. Fear explained her. It did not return Dad's 12 minutes. At the restitution office, I received messages from people who believed I should forgive because Diana manipulated us both. Others said I should hate her permanently. Both groups wanted a clean moral image. I stopped allowing strangers to assign emotional sentences. I loved my sister. I did not trust her. I understood her fear. I opposed her release. I remembered protecting her as a child. I remembered her holding Ben at its funeral. I remembered the white wedding sleeve burning as I pulled her from the chapel. All true. Justice did not make us sisters again because prison had not stopped us being sisters. The relation remained. Access did not. Dad's criminal exposure also changed how people spoke about him. Former employees described his generosity. Residents described his control. Executives described him as weak. Helen described him as a man who paid for silence and later hated the cost. Ben described him as good at chess and bad at asking children for help. That was the most accurate summary. My audit case ended in a civil finding rather than criminal conviction. The panel concluded I failed to escalate clear warning signs and accepted management explanations without sufficient verification. I lost my professional certification for 3 years. The decision hurt. I wanted the panel to distinguish between my delay and the family's murders. It did. Then it held me responsible for the delay. Being framed did not make every accusation unfair. That lesson became the boundary between justice and revenge. I paid a settlement into the resident fund. The amount was more than I could afford. I sold my apartment and moved with Ben into a smaller place near his school. Diana had once said I destroyed the only family capable of keeping him secure. Our new apartment had thin walls, unreliable heating, and no locked chapel. Ben slept with his door open. Security had changed meaning. One evening, a package arrived from prison. Wedding ring. No note. Ben asked what I would do with it. Return it. Why not sell it? Because I do not want her debt becoming our money. He considered that. Can money be bad? No, but people can decide what a thing means before accepting it. We returned the ring through her lawyer. Wrote back, you always get to be the principled one after someone else loses everything. Dad had said something similar during our final argument. The family's voices echoed through one another. For a day, the sentence worked. Then I listed what lost. Freedom, inheritance, marriage, company, reputation. What I lost, Dad, years earlier. My son for weeks. Career, home, trust. Comparing pain did not produce morality. I did not answer. On Ben's 11th birthday, Helen gave him a new chest set with no hidden compartments. He laughed when she said so. We invited 3 school friends, my lawyer, and Mr. Hale. No hearts except us. Halfway through the party, Ben placed the white queen beside the blue king. Are they enemies? I asked. No. Friends? No. What are they? Pieces. He moved both away from the center. Family had taught him to see symbols too early. He was learning to let objects become ordinary again. So was I. House reopened 3 years after the wedding. It was no longer a private estate. The restitution trust converted the ground floor into a legal clinic for elderly people facing coerced wills, medical control, and abusive guardianship. The chapel became an archive and meeting room. The hidden safe remained open behind glass. A plaque explained the 2 wills, the keys, and the danger of allowing inheritance disputes to decide child custody. No names appeared on the plaque without consent. Ben chose his first name only. I chose mine. Declined. Diana objected from prison. The house had once displayed portraits of the Hart family, as though property proved virtue. The clinic replaced them with a wall listing residents whose assets had been taken. 37 names from Dad's file, then more uncovered during the audit. Aunt Rose appeared among them. Arthur appeared on a separate panel describing responsible executives and concealed evidence. No founder's portrait, no redeemed patriarch. Dad's second will created the clinic. His first choices created the need. Both belonged there. At the opening, a reporter asked whether the house represented my victory over my sister. No. What does it represent? Property no longer deciding who counts as family. The answer sounded polished because I had considered it for years. That did not make it false. Ben was 12 and tall enough to look me directly in the eye without lifting his chin. He carried the blue king in his pocket but no longer slept beside it. We entered the chapel together. The stone beneath the organ loft had been repaired after the fire. A darker line marked the edge. Joined through a supervised video call from prison, she asked to see the room. Ben agreed. I held the tablet while he walked her through the clinic. Saw the open safe. She said Dad always wanted an audience. Ben answered, so did Grandma. Then he looked at me. So did you sometimes. The truth arrived without cruelty. Yes. During the scandal, I had felt the pull of public exposure. Attention could punish the people who controlled private rooms. It could also turn Ben's pain into my vindication. I did not always know where one ended. Asked whether the wedding dress had been saved. No, I said. The burned fabric had been evidence, then disposed of after trial. She looked relieved. Objects can hold versions of us we are not ready to see. Before ending the call, said, I am sorry. Not to Ben specifically. Not to me. A sentence released without a demand. Ben said goodbye. I did too. No promise of reconciliation. No performance of permanent hatred. The call ended. In the clinic office, Helen kept the original printed alert from Rose's death. Mr. Hale donated copies of Dad's funeral instructions. Provided public court records. My former lawyer built a guide for parents facing financially motivated custody petitions. The house served people because no relative inherited it. That was the final justice. Not taking the rooms from and giving them to me. Removing the idea that blood entitled any of us to own them. Outside, children from the neighborhood played on the lawn where wedding cameras once waited. Ben set up the blue and white chessboard beneath a tree. A younger child asked why the blue king was scratched. Long story, he said. Does it have secret powers? No. He placed it on the board. It moves 1 square. The child looked disappointed. Ben smiled. Sometimes 1 square is enough. I watched from the clinic steps. For years, every person in my family had believed survival required, controlling the whole board. Dad wrote 2 wills. Diana built hidden roots. Julian wrote every possible legal ending. Took a child to control a company. I walked into a wedding carrying revenge and called it truth. Some of that truth was necessary. Some of the performance was mine. The lesson was not to stop acting. It was to stop pretending action made one person the sole owner of justice. Ben moved the king. No midnight code. No recorder. No adult waiting for a child to complete a plan. Only a piece crossing 1 square of an ordinary board. The house behind us belonged to no heart. For the first time, that made it feel safe.
I was a prisoner of the night, but now I see the morning light. No chains to hold me, no more fear. I'm flying high, crystal clear. They try to cage my endless soul, but now I'm free, now I'm in